later this month, I will deliver my second budget as Chancellor of the Exchequer. At that budget, I will make the choices necessary to deliver strong foundations for our economy. My budget, led by this government's values of fairness and opportunity, and focused entirely on the priorities of the British people: protecting our NHS, reducing our national debt, and improving the cost of living. There is a lot of speculation about the choices that I will make. I understand that. These are important choices that will shape the future of our country for years to come. I want people to understand the circumstances we are facing, the principles guiding my choices, and why I believe they will be the right choices for our country. We are a country with considerable economic strengths, an open trading economy, a global hub for cutting-edge industries, from AI to biotech, with world-leading universities and scientific institutions, and a talented and a committed workforce. But years of economic mismanagement has limited our country's potential, with long-term issues continually unchecked and potential unrealised. At the budget last year, I fixed the foundations, dealing with the aftermath of Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget and the £22 billion black hole in the public finances left by the previous government. I put our public finances back on a firm footing, provided an urgent cash injection into our faltering public services, and began rebuilding our economy. But since that budget, the world has thrown even more challenges our way. The continual threat of tariffs has dragged on global confidence, deterring business investment and dampening growth. Inflation has been too slow to come down, as supply chains continue to be volatile, meaning the costs of everyday essentials remain too high. And the cost of government borrowing has increased around the world, a shift that Britain, with our high levels of debt left by the previous government, has been particularly exposed to. And in an uncertain world, we also face pressure to increase our defence spending, and it is right that we do that, protecting ourselves from hostile actors and supporting our allies. And there are other pressures on the public finances. The Prime Minister, the Secretary of Work and Pensions, and this whole government are committed to reforming our welfare state, so that it is not a system that counts the costs of failure, but one that invests in success and protects those who need it most. There is nothing progressive about refusing to reform a system that is leaving 1 in 8 young people out of education or employment. So we have begun the job of creating a system that protects people who cannot work and empowers those who can. And there are longer-term challenges too. That feeling, shared by millions of people across the country, that the economy isn't working as it should. Alongside the budget this month, the Office of Budget Responsibility, the UK's public finance watchdog, will set out the conclusions of their review of the supply side of the UK economy. I will not preempt those conclusions, but it is already clear that the productivity performance that we inherited from the last government is weaker than previously thought. A less productive economy is one that produces less output per hour worked. That has consequences for working people, for their jobs, and for their wages. And it has consequences for the public finances too, in lower tax receipts. It's not a question of how hard people work. Poor productivity means that we're putting in more, but getting out less. It means too many businesses and workers don't have the tools that they need. Trains that run on time, broadband that's fast and reliable, access to new technologies, or proper training so people have the right skills for the job. For a long time, commentators have talked about Britain's productivity puzzle. But it's not a puzzle. The causes of our economic underperformance are well understood. The chronic stop-go cycle of public investment has left us with roads full of potholes, high energy prices, and unstable conditions for vital business investment in skills and technology. And long-term failure to invest in our regions has built growth on a narrow base, with some parts of the country forging ahead while others fall behind. The truth is that previous governments have not adequately faced up to these challenges. Too often, political convenience has been prioritised over economic imperative. The decision to pursue a policy of austerity after the financial crisis dealt a hammer blow to our economy, gutting our public services and severing the flows of investment that would have put our country on a path to recovery. The years that followed were characterised by instability and indecision, with crucial capital investment continually sacrificed and hard decisions put off again and again. And then a rushed and ill-conceived Brexit that brought further disruption, as businesses trying to trade were faced with extra costs and extra paperwork. All this meant that when the pandemic arrived, our country was underprepared, our public services weakened and our economy fragile. We finished the pandemic with higher death rates and higher debt than our peers. This isn't about relitigating old choices. It's about being honest with the people about the consequences that those choices have had. It is my job to deal with the world as we find it, not the world that I might wish it to be. Not to commentate or to speculate, but to act. In my May's lecture last year, I set out our plan for solving our productivity problem through a programme of stability, investment and reform. And when I became Chancellor, I began to put that plan into action, stabilising our public finances, making the tax and spending decisions to get debt down and to fund our public services sustainably, changing the fiscal rules to increase public investment by £120 billion over the course of this Parliament, and crowding in private investment too, for road and for rail, for housing and nuclear power, and reforming our economy, ripping up the planning rules so we can build housing and infrastructure right across the country, bringing the brightest and the best to our shores with a new visa regime, and signing trade deals with the EU, the US and India to help businesses export around the world. We've begun to see the results of those plans in falling interest rates and falling NHS waiting lists, in rising wages and rising investment. But I know that real progress takes time. Our growth was the fastest in the G7 in the first half of this year. I don't expect anyone to be satisfied with growth of 1%. I'm not, and I know that there is more to do. The first part of our planning reforms will add an additional £6.8 billion to the size of our economy in the next 5 years. But the next part, our planning bill, must complete its passage through Parliament before it can make a difference. Interest rates, which rose from 0.1% to 5.25% in the last Parliament, have now been cut 5 times. But at 4%, they are still a constraint on business borrowing and a burden on family finances. Inflation is already much lower than the double digits seen under the previous government. And the choices I make in this budget this month will be focused on getting inflation falling and creating the conditions for interest rate cuts to support economic growth and improve the cost of living. I understand the urge for easy answers. But politicians of recent years have become addicted to shelling out for short-term sticking plaster solutions rather than making long-term economic plans. They were irresponsible then, and those who continue to push for easy answers are irresponsible now. The UK's national debt now stands at £2.6 trillion, equivalent to 94% of GDP. Before the mini-budget, our borrowing costs were in the middle of the pack compared to other advanced economies. But now we have the highest borrowing costs of any G7 country. Today, 1 in every £10 of taxpayers' money is spent on debt interest. Not paying that debt down, but just paying the interest to our creditors. At the budget last year, I changed the fiscal rules to strike a careful balance, to invest more in capital alongside a credible plan to grow our economy and bring debt down within this Parliament. That was the right decision, to break the cycle of low productivity and low growth. But that additional investment can only be delivered because markets know my commitment to the fiscal rules is ironclad. Some people say that we should just sidestep those rules, that we can borrow more without consequence by simply reclassifying areas like defence or education. But no accounting trick can change the basic fact that government debt is sold on financial markets. There are limits on the price that banks, hedge funds and pension funds are willing to pay for our debt. And we are competing constantly with other countries also selling debt. The more that we try to sell, the more it will cost us. It is important that everyone, the public and politicians, understand that reality. The less we spend on debt interest, the more we can spend on the priorities of working people. Our NHS, our schools, our national security. The public service is essential to both a decent society and a strong economy. At the budget last year, I provided our public services with a vital cash injection, and I am proud of that choice. Proud that it is a Labour government that is providing record investment in our NHS, getting waiting lists down by over 200,000 since the election. Proud that it is a Labour government that is investing in our children through the rollout of free breakfast clubs and free school meals. And proud that it is a Labour government that is funding our armed forces and remains resolute in our NATO commitments. The alternative is to row back on those investments, to return to the cycle of austerity and decline, which is what got us here in the first place, passing the cost of government failure onto communities and families, stifling our economic growth and weakening Britain's foundations in an unstable world. I will not repeat those mistakes. But if we want strong public services in the decades to come, then we must recognise that productivity and efficiency are not only a challenge for business, they are a challenge for the public sector too. At the spending review, I announced £14 billion of efficiencies per year to be delivered by 2029. Cutting government spend on consultancies, getting rid of bureaucratic quangos and regulators, and driving efficiency through AI and digital technologies. But I know that there is more to do. In the budget and beyond, I will continue to drive for more productive and more efficient public services right across government, making savings and rooting out waste wherever I find it. Now, my opponents will tell you that they could do more. Reform, who promise savings from our public services, and yet, in Kent County Council and councils they run across Britain, apparently they can't find a single penny, and instead going to increase council tax for more than 2 million people. Or the Conservatives, who promised £47 billion of cuts, when during 14 years in power they oversaw rising welfare costs and a growing civil service. What were they doing for 14 years? Let us be clear. There is no way that cuts on that scale, equivalent to cutting our entire armed forces, or cutting every single police officer in the country, twice over, could be delivered without devastating consequences for our public services. Austerity, reckless borrowing, made-up numbers. They are the problems, not the solutions. They are the mistakes of the past which would only take us backwards. I will not repeat them. When I was appointed Chancellor, people put their faith in me to take our country forward. Not to be swayed by political convenience. Not to always do what is popular, but to do what is right. At the budget, I will continue to deliver on the priorities of the British people. cutting NHS waiting lists, cutting the national debt, and cutting the cost of living. And in the context of the long-term challenges on our productivity and heightened global uncertainty, any chancellor of any party would be standing here today facing the choices that I face. The difference is in the priorities and the values that will guide those choices. Mine will be a budget for growth, with fairness at its heart, and a budget that supports businesses to create jobs and to innovate. As I take my decisions on both tax and spend, I will do what is necessary to protect families from high inflation and interest rates, to protect our public services from a return to austerity, and to ensure that the economy that we hand down to future generations is secure, with debt under control. If we are to build the future of Britain together, we will all have to contribute to that effort. Each of us must do our bit for the security of our country and the brightness of its future. There is a reward for getting these decisions right. To build more resilient public finances with the headroom to withstand global turbulence. Giving business the confidence to invest and leaving government freer to act when the situation calls for it. To continue to invest in our infrastructure and our industry to build a stronger economy. And to get the cost of borrowing down, spending less on debt interest and more on schools and on our health service. The Office of Budget Responsibility will make their forecasts at the end of this month. But let's be clear about what forecasts are. They're not visions of the future. They are a look in the rearview mirror. The OBR rightly make their predictions based on the data that has gone before. But I do not believe that our past has to determine our future, or that a stuttering economy, poor productivity, and falling living standards is somehow Britain's destiny. A brighter future is within our grasp. We were elected to break with the cycle of decline, and this government is determined to see that through. So we will go further and faster on planning, on the industrial strategy, on reforming regulation, all to deliver growth throughout our economy in all parts of our country. We will bear down on waiting lists, on the cost of living, and on the national debt, which compound these challenges. And when that requires hard choices, we will act, guided by the interests of working people. We were elected on a commitment to put country before party, the national interest before political calculation. And whatever challenges come our way, whatever challenges come my way, we will not be swayed from that. At the budget this year, I will continue to build the strong foundations to secure Britain's future. For a fairer Britain, a more prosperous Britain, a Britain with an economy that works for everyone. Thank you very much. I'll now take questions from people. Start with Beth Rigby from Sky News.
Thank you. Chancellor, you made history in your last budget when you increased taxes by £40 billion in the biggest tax-raising budget in over a generation. You said at the time it was a once-in-a-parliament tax-raising budget, and you told me explicitly Labour would stick to our manifesto commitment not to increase taxes that working people pay. Today, do you still stand by both those promises? And if you can't, or if you won't, aren't you making a mockery of the voters that put their trust in you at the general election? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beth. I will set out the individual policies at the budget on the 26th of November. That's not what today is about. Today is about setting the context for that budget. And your viewers can see the challenges that we face, but the challenges that are on a global nature. And they can also see the challenges in the long-term performance of our economy. And the Office of Budget Responsibility will set all that out. They've done the review of the supply side of the economy. That looks at the past, but they use the past to predict the future. And as Chancellor, I have to face the world as it is, not the world that I want it to be. And when challenges come our way, the only question is how to respond to them, not whether to respond or not. And as I respond at the budget on the 26th of November, my focus will be on getting NHS waiting lists down, getting the cost of living down, and also getting the national debt down. Robert Peston from ITV News.
Chancellor, good to see you. You've just made the case, in effect, for raising taxes by tens of billions of pounds. The HMRC stats don't lie. If you do that, you will have to put up taxes for millions of people, including those you call working people, won't you?
Well, today is not about individual choices. They will be set out in the usual way in the budget. But what I want people to understand as we go into that budget is the circumstances which we face, and that is circumstances of great opportunities for our country, for the reasons that I set out, but also big challenges. And as Chancellor, I could do what previous governments have done, which is to sweep those challenges under the carpet, to cut capital spending to make the numbers add up, but then we'd be back here in a year or in 5 years' time with productivity still on its knees, growth underperforming compared with our peers, and the national debt continued to rise. So I'm being honest with people that at the election I said that we would put the national interest first. People can see that things are changing, that the global circumstances are challenging, and I hope they will see at the budget on the 26th of November that the focus on getting the debt down, getting NHS waiting lists down, and getting the cost of living down, which continues to be people's number one concern, are the priorities that I will be focusing on. Neil MacDonald from Channel 4 News.
Hello, Chancellor. Concerns about the OBR's assessment of productivity have been around for years and years and years.